Howdy, howdy, y'all. Last week, I had a pretty unique opportunity to tour a place about 15 minutes down the road from me called Arbor Village. The village is in a place called River Valley that some of you may have heard of or seen the signs for on the interstate because it's Kentucky's country music capital. Arbor Village is a collection of log cabins and other log buildings that have been relocated here from Virginia, Tennessee, other parts of Kentucky, and reassembled in their original state in a kind of a valley, I guess you would say. The property was rented out for a long time for weddings and other events. There have been restaurants and things there in the village, and now it's for sale. I have a friend who's been interested in buying it. He's a chef, and he had some ideas for the property. So we went down one morning last week and took a look, and I thought I'd get some footage of it to share with you all who don't live close or might be interested in buying it. I have no idea. I do apologize. My first two clips, of course, the general store and the church, did not make it back home with me somehow, but I managed to work around it to put together a pretty decent video. It is a little bit long, but there's a lot of information in it about the buildings and things like that. So I hope you all enjoy. This building here on the left is what they call the general store, and here at this location it had a tea room in the bottom and a fabric store. This is the church. They still had services in it up until 3 years ago, and it has heating and air conditioning. I'm not exactly sure where this cabin was moved here from, but it's a homesteader's cabin. It's pretty amazing this thing existed somewhere else and they've taken it apart and rebuilt it, and it still looks this good. This is the creek behind it. I'll talk some more about that in a minute. Now up here in the front of the cabin, you're able to see musket ball marks where somebody shot at this cabin at some point in its history. And see the slot there for shooting back. Now inside the cabin is a dirt floor. This bed was pretty cool. It actually raises up and attaches to the wall, so there's more floor space in here. You can see some other antique things they've got in storage. This cover on this window amazed me how thick the wood was on it. They were going to make sure nobody could shoot through that window. Then you could see the shooting slot, or whatever the real name is for those things. There's the church again. Now, one of the most interesting things about the church to me was the fact that the bell in the top came from a Confederate Army train back during the Civil War. Now, this building we're walking up to, I think it was just a homesteader's cabin. I could be wrong. It hasn't been completely reassembled yet. You can see the gaps in the logs. Now, over here on the side, you'll see white tags on the ends of the logs, and that was the numbering system they used when they bought this cabin wherever it was originally located and then brought it here to reassemble. This way they knew that each log went back in its original place. There's Josh looking it over. Some of y'all have heard me talk about my friend Josh before. Josh's claim to fame is he has been on Food Network 3 or 4 times and won Guy Fieri's grocery games twice, 3 times I think. I can't remember exactly. Barn was moved here from Tennessee. I don't remember if he told us or not what part of Tennessee. It's a cantilever barn. If you've been to Cades Cove in the Smoky Mountains, you've seen a more famous cantilever barn. This is the old blacksmith shop. I'm wanting to say he told us it was moved here from Virginia, but don't hold me to that. It has been a working blacksmith shop here at this location. You can see the anvil and horseshoes, the coal pit in the back, the blower, everything's still there. You can probably go in here and make you some horseshoes or some nails with a little cleaning up. When Josh turned to crank on this blower, I wouldn't have been that brave. He rang the bell in the church too. I said, if that bell falls out of that steeple, I'm just going to go to the car and leave, not say a word to anybody. I don't remember what this building was used for. I think it was just some kind of a storage building or maybe a workshop. It's not very big. It wasn't big enough to really live in. Here's the other side of that building. Like I said, it's not very big. It could have even been a corn crib, for all I know. This is actually a pretty good sized property. It's 22 acres. There's a pond on back up in there. These are the last two buildings on the property. All the buildings that were relocated are up here closer to the road in this flat spot. You can kind of think of this place as like a mini holler. There were hills on both sides of it, and this is just kind of like a cove up into those hills. Now that cabin there on the left is pretty much livable, full bathroom, full kitchen, all that good stuff. We'll talk about it some more in a minute. This building Josh is opening the door on right now is a salt house, and this is where people would salt their meat and hang it to cure back in the day, because of course nobody had a refrigerator. And that's another reason why it's tall, so you could hang your meat in there. Good old country hams. Now, if you notice the logs at the bottom of the building, especially on this side and the front, they're lighter in color, and that's because animals would lick the logs lowest on the building to get the salt content out. The salt from the meat that was cured would sometimes fall and absorb into the wood, and the animals would lick the logs. You can see it real good right there in the front where they just licked it slick. That cabin you're seeing back there in the back is the last cabin on the property. We'll go in a minute, but the road goes on up in there to the pond and more of the property. This is the cabin that is pretty much ready to live in if you wanted to. The owner said they rented it out as kind of like a weekend thing to people. It does have, like I said, a full kitchen, full bathroom, as does the upstairs of the barn and the general store. You can see the air conditioner up in the top in the sleeping area. It's a bigger cabin than it looks like from the front because it's kind of deep. This back part back here is the bathroom and the kitchen. This is looking from the back up toward the front of the property. As you can see, it's a long piece of land cleared out here for all these buildings. It was such a nice day. A little early in the morning, but when you have days like that in the wintertime, you have to take advantage of them and appreciate them. And now we are getting ready to go into the rental cabin. That's just what I'm going to call it. I'm thinking he had a name for it, like the Pennington cabin or something like that. With the name Pennington, it kind of makes you think it may have come from Southwest Virginia. Like where Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky kind of collide there. It's pretty wild to think that all these buildings existed somewhere else. None of them were really together. And they were completely taken apart and moved here. See all the old pictures hanging above the fireplace. A beautiful fireplace at that. Now there is a loft, actually kind of two lofts to this. The loft upstairs is kind of split in two. There's a part on the right and a part on the left. The part on the left is higher up than the part on the right. I'll go up there here in a few minutes and kind of show you what I mean by that. There's an old spinning mill. And on this table was a deck of playing cards, and I was dying to pick them up and go through them and see if there was a date on them, but I was trying not to touch too much stuff and be respectful. Now, in case anybody's getting any bright ideas, there are security cameras all over this property. And there are houses on both sides of it at the tops of the hills. So you're not going to be able to sneak in here without anybody noticing. This is the kitchen. I was really digging this kitchen sink. Even though there is city water out here, it still had the well pump. We thought it was a hot water heater. And then he explained to us it was an ice box back in the day. Top part there with the handle is where you lifted up and stored your ice. And I'm sure that was a huge luxury for whoever owned that back in the day. These are the stairs that go up to the loft, and I had to watch my head. When you are 6'3", anytime you tour any kind of a historical home or anything like that, you have to watch your head because overhangs are very low, and I have cold-cocked myself several times going on tours of places. People were just a lot shorter back then. This is the upstairs sleeping area. And then we're going to look over here to the other part of the loft. See, there's like 3 steps that go up to it. It's not big enough to sleep anybody, I wouldn't think. Maybe some children, but a good place to store your clothes, things like that. As you can tell, this front room is actually pretty good size. That fireplace is just something else. But in all honesty, it's nothing compared to the fireplace at Josh's house. I'll have to show y'all that thing sometimes. First time I saw that fireplace when they bought that house, I was amazed. This is the cabin that's the farthest back from the road. It's nowhere near as big as the cabin we just came out of, but it was really neat. The door, to me, was the neatest part of it, and I'll show you that when we're leaving. I get to close it. Now, naturally, you see how small this cabin was. There is no bathroom or kitchen or anything like that. There is a loft in here, like a half loft, that you can sleep in, but as far as any kind of modern amenities other than electricity, you're not getting that in this cabin. And Josh made an interesting point. I think in this cabin, we were looking at the logs, and he said, you know, how old were the trees that were cut to build this cabin, which is now, 200 some odd years old. There's the ladder up to the loft. There really wasn't anything up there to look at. I didn't climb up there. Going out the door, look at this door. And when you do this, watch. Some of the bars move up, some of the bars move down, and it latches into the roof and the floor. We thought that was pretty cool. And it's not a jail door. Apparently it was just a door. Keep the bears and the varmints out. Now, this is walking back up to the cantilevered barn. And I mentioned earlier that this was located here from Tennessee. I don't think he told us where at in Tennessee this was originally built, because I would have remembered that. The upstairs in this barn is huge, huge. And right now it's just a lot of storage in the barn. Like I said, this place hasn't been functioning for 3 or 4 years. There's another look at that old carriage. That thing is so cool. Can you imagine rolling up to Walmart in that? Now, going into the bottom of the barn, he was telling us the floor in here came from a bowling alley in Winchester, which is about a 20-minute drive from where I live. Maybe a 40-minute drive, 45-minute from here. Really, the only thing in the downstairs of the barn was a lot of storage and a lot of Christmas lights, which made me wonder, what did this place look like back when they put Christmas lights on all the buildings? I'm sure that was something to see, especially out here in the woods like this, where you wouldn't expect it. I had to get this sign because I have some friends that live pretty close to Flemingsburg. Old Mamie McCann. We're going up the stairs to the barn. They were a little friendlier to tall people than the stairs in that cabin. Like I said, up here is a huge room. This awesome bathroom. Look at that bathtub. There's a full kitchen. If I were guessing, you could probably seat 30 people up here for dinner, maybe more than that. I guess it's just what size people you have and whether or not we're still having to be social distancing from each other. This was a sewing room that they used to make quilts, and that's a big quilt sewing machine if you've never seen one. A long time ago, I got to push one of those up North Broadway in Berea with a woman named Vicky. She had a quilt shop in town and was moving from a shop at the bottom of the hill on Broadway to a shop at the top of the hill on Broadway, and me and her pushed that thing up that hill up the middle of the road. Now, walking into the kitchen up here, it's a modern kitchen. The stove in here looks antique, but when you look at it closely, it has electric burners. He told us that they bought this stove new to look antique, but it's not an antique. And the teapot really caught my attention because if you notice the picture of the U.S. Capitol on the teapot, the dome isn't finished, which should tell you a little something about that teapot. Now, this old potbelly stove was on a porch, and I liked it because it said, "My Old Kentucky Home." Our state song, "My Old Kentucky Home." Now, these are just some things that were on the porch of the general store that I found interesting. I really, really hate that my footage of the general store and the church is not to be found, but I did get a little bit in here when we got to go back through it on the way out, and you'll be able to see there are lots of antiques and things in here. And I think I've mentioned before, the downstairs of this had been used as like a tea room kind of restaurant kind of thing up until about 4 years ago, and the upstairs was a fabric shop. Look, there's a picture of me and my future ex-wife Peaches Grace. There's so much cool pottery in here too. Y'all know I like pottery. Here's a view of the front of the general store, which is pretty close to the road. You can see the parking area right there on the right. The building off in the distance there was an old post office. We didn't really go over there too much. It's looking back towards the church. It's funny, we were all sitting in the parking lot talking, getting ready to leave and asking more questions, and these two guys came up on horses and said hi to us and went on their way. You see that a whole lot in Kentucky. As you can tell, Brush Arbor Village is a pretty unique and special place with a lot of history. I was really lucky to get to go down and tour the place with my friend while he ponders buying it. Of course, I took all the original sound out of the video because they were talking business and probably some things that don't need to be put out over the internet, private information and that sort of thing. But I hope I did a halfway decent job narrating and telling you some of the history of it, and I really hope you enjoyed that look at it. But you know, Christmas is what, a week and a half away? I got a lot of work to do. I have some pretty interesting videos coming up. I have one that the idea came to me 2 nights ago and I'm really excited about. I'll let y'all know more about that coming up in the future. So until next time, you all know I appreciate you watching so much. I hope wherever you're at, you're staying warm and safe. I'll talk to you later.